All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are having a great start to the week. I'm going to make this video pretty short and quick. I had a question from a mid-20 person in their mid-20s, specifically asking about, hey, Matt, you have a little bit of experience under your belt. What would you do if you were me? Would you invest in a brokerage account? Would you focus on an IRA? I guess it's just too many degrees of freedom, and they're really just looking for some sort of guidance to truly get them going down their path of investing. Now, I think that this is kind of a loaded question, right? Because I think a lot of people will have so many different degrees of freedom, right? And it's all very much dependent upon what they're looking at and when their time horizon is. And but specifically talking about a 25-year-old individual, I would specifically look at approximately how long you want to get until you're retired, how much you plan on saving annually. I would look at what your kind of risk tolerance is, not necessarily for the debate with respect to the brokerage versus IRA, but it plays into it. I'd also look at if you have a 401k, 403b, or equivalent with your employer. Generally speaking, they provide a match with that. That could also be pre-tax or post-tax, which is something that could play into it as well. And so I just want to make a quick video, talk a little bit about it. Hopefully this video can help some of you guys make that sort of decision. Now, if you are somebody who is taking this opportunity to invest and you're only, say, putting away $500 or $1,000 a year, you're not really putting away, let's just say, more than 10 to 15% of your income, I would say you should mostly look towards those retirement accounts. That just being said, it's best to put those in sort of retirement accounts because those are the best tax advantage accounts you have. Now, if you're putting away more than, say, 15% of your income, that's something then you could start to really get after the fact that you're investing way more than you might potentially need in retirement, and it might give you the opportunity to retire early. And to be very frank, most of the time, just like I do, I utilize a hybrid, right? I try to maximize the amount up to a match of a 401k, but the majority of the money, knowing that I'm going to be well off financially, I'm putting away a lot of money every single month, putting way more than 15% of my annual income away every single month. I do a hybrid. Majority of my money, 70 to 80% of it, is out of retirement accounts. Even if I were to max out, say, a 401k Roth IRA, I would still, just based off the amount of pure money that I invest, have to do some in a brokerage account. Now, I think potentially a good rule of thumb, now apologies, I'm pulling up spreadsheets and stuff here. Hopefully it's not too complex. But I think that there's a simple little spreadsheet that you can kind of create to help yourself, whether or not, you want to specifically look at, let's just say, a brokerage account, or whether or not you want to kind of look more into, say, utilizing an IRA. Now, at the moment, as of 2023, the IRA contribution limits are going to be $6,500. Now, if you're looking at a 401k, you're looking at something different like that, 403b, or God knows what other TSP, thrift savings plan, what have you, for, say, some of the government employees, this is going to be more in the lines of, say, $18,000 to $19,000. So I'm going to leave that up to your guys' discretion about how much that $17,000, $18,000 could be in terms of your annual income. But let's just take this $65,000. Let's say, for example, you make $6,500, and you say, for example, make $65,000 a year. So this is about 10% of your annual income. And let's just throw some numbers in here, right? And 8% annual return, some inflation, and what you're starting off with, right? So say you're starting off with $6,500 that you're putting in day one. And this is kind of a look at, in the long term, what your pullout will be, right, at retirement, right? So if you're investing in an IRA, you're mostly focusing on what you could potentially pull out at, say, 60 or 59 and a half, 60 years old. Now, of course, it's always recommended to wait longer, obviously, but then you play against like, well, how long am I going to live, right? Am I going to die at 60? Am I going to die at 65? And it's, you always play that game of one more year. I'm going to be playing that game as well because, in some sort of conversations, I could retire and do other things, right? And retire is a stupid word, right? Because I'm never going to retire. But in reality, what I'd probably do is do some more things that I could do from a self-sustaining standpoint, whether that's real estate or whether that's investing, whether that's helping others with their investing journey, what have you, to help generate income, doing YouTube more so full-time, stuff like that. But what this is going to help you is kind of give you an idea as to maybe a starting point, right? Now, it's an iterative process, right? So there's no one size fits all. It's based off of conversations. It's based off of you educating yourself, coming back, testing assumptions. Things change all the time. It's a very moving equation. It's not like a, hey, we're going to figure it out today sort of thing, but maybe this gives you a guidance to go forward with. So let's just start at $6,500. And you can contribute that every single year. So annual contribution is $6,500. You're going to start at $6,500, 8% return, 2% inflation. Now, this goes to 25 to 60 years old. And by the time you get to 60 years old, 8% return, you're getting about $1.3 million in the bank. But with inflation of 2%, that's really only showing up as $640,000. So if you start pulling out at 3% a year, what does that actually look like? That's about $40,000 a year if you're pulling out 3%, or $50,000 a year, $52,000 if you're pulling out 4%. Now, I'm not going to get into the 3-4% rule, but in too much depth. But what it basically means is some people say if you pull out 3% or 4% a year, obviously you're going to have ups and downs in the market. Some months or years you'll have very flat markets. Sometimes you'll have a retracement. Sometimes you'll grow. But overall, you'll generally grow at 7 to 9% a year, which kind of evens out to about 8%. And so in some years, you're pulling out 4%, but you're just flat. So your portfolio goes down to 96% of its total value. And then the next year it might go up, say 12%. And you then still pull out the 4%. And over time, it's likely that you'll be able to outlive your money on a 30 to 40 year time span. So that gives you a life of, say, 30 years beyond your retirement. So 90 to 100 years old or so. And that's kind of where you're kind of leaning towards for this particular sort of thought. Now, if this doesn't seem like enough money to you, especially after inflation, $19,000 to $26,000 a year, then that's when you start to think, okay, well, combining certain accounts, right? And of course, this really helps and amplifies if you have a 401k match, right? So if your company is, say, going to match you up to 10%, because remember, we're starting with $65,000, we're contributing $6,500, and instead of an IRA, now we're looking at a, say, 401k or something of the like, and they're going to match 10%, which is phenomenal. It's generally really unheard of, but let's just say for this example that they do, then this is actually going to be $13,000 for your annual contribution, and this might seem like something that's a little bit more reasonable, right? So let's just go back to $6,500 just for this quaint example. That's kind of it, right? Like this is just like a little bit of a way that you can do some trial and error to see what's right for you. Now, keep in mind, $6,500, the reason why we started with that is that's the IRA limit for 2023. Now, of course, over time, it could increase, right? But this gives you a starting point to kind of say, oh, crap, that's not enough, right? Or damn, that's more money than I have today. Like if I'm able to get that $6,500 scraped away, looks pretty good, right? So this is to give you a feel, right? It's not a one size fits all, but it's at least to kind of give you a direction. Now, say you do really well, you're able to put away, say, something like $18,000 a year, which might be 30%, closer to 30% of your savings. 8% return, inflation's at 2%. Let's just say, for example, it goes up to 2.5%. Let's say return goes down to 7%. Now you're starting to look at, say, $34,000, $45,000 a year in income once you kind of get to the 60-year-old sort of mark. And the reason why we're using 60 is because at 59.5 is really when those retirement accounts allow you to pull money out. You're really starting off at 2.7, but in reality, because you got 2.5% inflation instead of the 2% inflation, it's really only 1.25 in today's dollars, right? Because you have to account for that. So maybe you want to just do 2% just to kind of make you feel happy, and you end up with about $1.3 million instead in real today's dollars. That gets you to $54,000 a year. You're going to be able to pull out, and you'll be fat, dumb, and happy, right? I mean, that's pretty good money that you could supplement, coupled with Social Security if there is something of the like, and any other sort of investments you might have, whether it's your home or what have you. So that kind of gives you just an idea, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be at 60. Maybe you want to do 65, or maybe you want to do 55, and you can adjust the calculator to kind of do just that. But this gives you an idea, right? But keep in mind, the limit for an IRA is $6,500 a year. This either means that you're getting a 401k match if you decide to do a 401k over an IRA, or this means that you're investing in a brokerage account. And so some of this money, if you're investing in a brokerage account, will be liable for taxes and paying taxes. Now, of course, if you're only making $50,000 a year, it's like you're not going to be paying much in taxes because you have the standard deduction of $12,500 and all those sorts of things that help offset some of that obligation for taxes at the end of the year. But at the same time, you will likely still have some. Now, if you're, say, investing $6,500 into the tax or to a IRA, which is tax deferred, and then you are, say, putting it into partly into a brokerage account, then part of it will be taxable, part of it will not be taxable, depending on if you're doing a Roth IRA versus a pre-tax. But at the end of the day, the hope is that you're at least getting your money invested, and you have an idea as to about what you should be looking at and what makes sense for you. And I think at the end of the day, it's really a two-step equation, or really three things you need to figure out or assume is how much can you put away today and kind of where you want to get to in your retirement. Say you want to get to 40,000 and you want to be really conservative. You want to pull out $40,000 a year. You have an equation right here, $18,000 a year contribution, 7% annual return, inflation of say 2%. Let's just say you want to bump it up to 8%. You really start to see how much wiggle room you have. And let's just say you want to be rather conservative. You want to do 6% annual return with a 2% inflation. You still want to get to that 30,000. You're going to be fine. In the case you want to say do a 4% return, you could lower this. So you're like, well, how low could I really get, right? And so you're looking closer at a $15,000 annual contribution, gets you to 31 to 35,000 if you want to do the 3.5 to 4%. And so this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea as to how much wiggle room you can kind of have. And I always recommend including an inflation calculation within here to be able to understand, how much it really gets eaten into over the course of time, because it's really not going to matter in 10 years or so. But once you get 25, 30 years down the road, it will have a much bigger impact. And I think that that's something that needs to be taken into account. For you to kind of truly understand in today's dollars what we're going to be looking at. Now, there's always a debate, 2%, 3%, is it actually 4%? That sort of conversation happens all the time. But at least this is going to get you closer towards where your goals are and really help you kind of understand, wow, to get to where I really want to go, it's not really a conversation about IRA versus brokerage. It might be a combination of both. Right, which is kind of where I'm at, right? I'm mostly focusing on doing both because obviously I'm investing way more than $6,500 a year. And in some cases, for an income bracket, you might be above, say, a Roth IRA, and you only be able to do a traditional IRA. And there's videos on the channel specifically talking about that as well. But I wanted to provide that lens to you guys. It was a question that showed up. And I think it's always really nice to have those sorts of questions and be able to answer that and throw a little bit of experience at it. Because originally, I was only like, oh, screw the government, right? Taxes. We're going to invest below those $6,500 and the $18,000 a year 401k limits. But at the end of the day, if you have the ability to save more, why wouldn't you? Yeah, you might have to pay a little bit of tax from a brokerage account, But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to save more, invest more, make more in the long run. Yes, you'll have to pay taxes, but taxes aren't always a bad thing. Taxes means you're making money. And yes, avoiding them at all costs and offsetting those taxes is the American way. I mean, that's definitely something I recommend you do. But at the end of the day, just make sure you're focusing on and not getting lost on only taxes, because then you might lock away your money until you're 60 years old and not have access to it. And that was one of the things I recognized early on. I don't max out my 401k. And people think like, oh my God, like, why wouldn't you, man? But at the end of the day, it's like, I know that I'm doing moves now. I'm buying rentals now. I'm buying other things now that don't require a 401k. It requires flexibility outside of a 401k. And I need access to that money to be able to move it around, have that flexibility. And so it's always nice to have that 10 to 15% annual kind of going to a 401k, going to a retirement account, because if anything else hits the fan, you still have that nest egg to rely on. But it's not the be all end all. So I really hope that this video drives a lot of conversation. I hope there's a great amount of comments in the comment section. But I honestly think for anybody, especially for 25 years old, and you have the opportunity to invest more than $6,500 and you don't have access to a 401k, that I would do a combination of both, right? If you're able to invest $10,000, I would do it. If you're able to invest more. But of course, only invest money that you can afford to lose, right? And that you're comfortable losing. To me, getting started, investing in the right things, and it ends up being a snowball effect, and it's a lot of fun, and it's dragged me into it, and it's been something I've been doing for 10 years, and I absolutely love it. So really wanted to share that with you. Really look forward to hearing from you guys in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you for the question, whoever it was, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.